Good afternoon. This is session 2 of our Ancient Hebrew and the Stars 3-part series. And this one is focusing on by the word of Yah were the heavens made. And so you'll need your little magazine handout, and I will be telling you or showing you on the screen when it's time to actually fill it out. You'll notice that last time we left a little portion undone. We'll catch that. But we are going to start with the first part of workshop session 2 on page 8 and 9. So go ahead and turn there to begin and just hang with me and we'll get it all done.
Are you going to finish 7?
We are. Yah is speaking in the heavens, and he has made the heavens as one of the 5 keys. One of my personal passions is the area that I call, well, it has a scientific name now, archaeoastronomy. And that is the study of astronomy restoring what it originally was, and using the information that's out there, because the Bible says that Yahweh named the stars and shaped the constellations. And the question then naturally comes, what name did he give them? What shapes did they originally have? And what was his message and purpose in that? Now, after the fall, I'm talking capital F, after the fall. How long was it before the first words of Scripture were written down? Have you thought about it? Well, arguably, the oldest book of the Bible is the book of Job. And after that, the books of Moses being Torah. Job is the book that has the most Masoreth information in it. And so with that order, we are talking 2,000 years from the time of the fall of man until the first written word. But what I've been finding in the heavens, what Yah has been showing his people all these times, all this time, is that indeed his word is in the heavens. Isaiah 40, verse 25 to 26 says, "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls them each by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." And the same prophetic symbols that you see in Scripture are the ones that are used in the sky. So the devil is represented as the crooked serpent, Leviathan, the dragon that's in the sea. And this is also the name of a constellation. And in Revelation 12:9, we know that that is a prophetic representation of Satan. Now, Yah revealed his constellation shapes to his people. If you're wanting to know, how did people know what to look for in the stars? I don't see those dots looking like that when I first look at them. It takes a while. And you'll look at them and you start to see them. And I know that's happening for you guys with the Big Dipper, right? You look at what we say, the W. It's actually the mem of Cassiopeia. And you go, oh, there it is. There it is. And you get the eyes to see it. But still, you go, how does that mem look like a woman? How do you get a woman out of that? Well, here's how you get it. Yah told it to man. He said, when you look at this, that's what you're seeing. And interestingly enough, when we talk about the mem being the woman, the mem anciently was drawn like a lightning bolt. Boom, boom, boom. It looks like the W. And that is the shape of the constellation Cassiopeia. The letters, in Hebrew, letters are the essence of words. It's unlike English. In Hebrew, the letters make the meaning of the word. You get the meaning of the word by adding the meaning of each letter that spells the word. Every letter is its own sermon. So a letter all by itself is not a meaningless thing. A letter all by itself is a sermon. By the word of Yah were the heavens made. And so those constellation shapes are directly associated with the original language on earth, which is much older than modern Hebrew. Much older, in fact, than any language. But Yah revealed to people, his people, what these things were. And this is something that has been passed down word of mouth from ancient times. So John P. Pratt, in his book, Scientifically Dating the Constellations, and the quote also online, and Hugh Thurston's Early Astronomy, published in 1994, says, nearly all ancient nations, including the Greeks, Romans, and Egyptians, attributed the constellations to a divine source, to God. The Hebrews, Persians, and Arabs attributed their names to the antediluvian patriarchs, such as Adam, Seth, and Enoch, who were all alive at the same time, because they lived a very long time. And modern astronomy confirms that the figures, also known as signs, also known as oats, which happens to be the Hebrew word for signs and also happens to be the Hebrew word for letters, by the word of Yah were the heavens made. The heavens were made for signs and seasons. Signs, oats, letters, shapes, constellations. They're together. Modern astronomy confirms that the figures most likely originated when Enoch lived, and Enoch is known amongst the Hebrew mindset going way back. He's the father of biblical astronomy. Enoch used to have church under the stars. People would gather, and he would tell them the plan of redemption from the heavens. And when there were sky events going on, there would be a special gathering, especially at the Tekufas. Come to the place that is usually the Great Clock, places like Stonehenge, It wasn't built by pagans, guys. Those places are all over the earth. There's one in Washington. I'd love to go see it. I've heard of them in Oregon, ancient setting up of big stones so that it serves as a clock, not just for what time of day it is. It's much more than that. It is a clock that helps you determine tekufas. Because after all, the tekufas are the heads of the year, and specifically the spring tekufa for determining the timing of the biblical holy days. So who cares about when tekufas are? Yah's people more than anybody else. The pagans have tried to take over the stuff that was Yah's. Enoch was the first hero in the Jewish tradition with whom the scientific material is associated. His area of scientific research and writing was astronomy, hence the passion for archaeoastronomy, going back to the way it was. Okay, so by the word of Yahweh were the heavens made. Let's take a look in your little magazine, page 9. And it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. By the word of Yahweh were the heavens made. Okay, so the first question is how does Psalms 19, 1-4 connect the heavens with language? Well, it uses words like declare, speech, and language. According to Psalms 33, verse 6, how were the heavens made? They were made by the word of Yahweh. Now, I had always taken that to be just that he spoke the world into existence and he spoke the heavens into existence. And certainly that is an application. But I think something we've all been noticing is that prophecy is multi-layered. Teachings are multi-layered. They don't just apply one way. So yes, he spoke the world and the heavens into existence. But he also put his word in the heavens. Interestingly enough, remember that the tree of life is associated with wheat, and the word for wheat is number 22. The letters that form the word for wheat in Hebrew comes out to the numeric value of 22. How many oats are there? Since ancient times in Proto-Canaanite, oats, how many letters are there? 22. Because the essence of creation is in his word. Word. Let's look it up. What does word mean? It means a matter as a spoken thing, a book, a commandment. It also means language. So when we come back and we put in by the word of Yah, word is debar in Hebrew, and it includes the spoken and written word. So it isn't just the speaking of the world into the existence. It's also the writing. Both are in the word for by the word of Yah were the heavens made. Word, spoken and written. Yahweh is speaking in the sky. And very sadly, I have to say, I've been deaf. Have you? Psalms 19, 1-3, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. And people say today, but isn't that a pagan thing? Yes, paganism tried to steal it, but no. Are we sure we really need this information? Well, Yah never gives anything we don't need. And interestingly enough, the Mazzaroth, as Job called these signs. The Mazzaroth is one of the 5 keys for unlocking end-time Bible prophecy. Genesis 1:14 says, the heavenly lights were made for signs. That's prophetic value. And for seasons, timing of the holy days. And for days and years. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about how the heavens are the clock. Everything that you just read about in there in Genesis 1:14 is clock related, time related. But one of those things in the time sequence is prophecy's fulfillment, signs. So much meaning is there. Psalms 33:9, for he spake and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. Lots of things about the speech of Yah, the word of Yah. Hebrews 11:3, through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of Yah, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. And guess what? All of the patriarchs, at least up through Daniel, they were astronomers. They tuned in and knew the sky. They were paying attention. And Babylon, bad name, bad place. But guess what? There was a special class of people in Babylon, and they were called the Magi. And up till the time of Daniel, they didn't amount to much. But after Daniel became the head of the Magi, the historical records are that the Magi could walk into town and the emperor of Rome, Caesar, he would clear his slate. Got time to hear these men. What have they got to say to me? Because they became kingmakers. They became people who had such wisdom and influence, and it wasn't their wisdom and influence. What they had was the knowledge passed down by Daniel that was based upon fully the word of Yah being in the heavens. And so would it surprise you to know that the Babylonian Magi were tracking the heavenly bodies' movements, that they were recording sky events when they were happening? Why would they care? Because they are prophetic signs. And they were looking for one particular one, the sign of Yeshua's arrival the first time. We'll be showing that tomorrow, but I just want to say how deeply connected with prophecy and timing this really is. 2 Peter 3:5, for this they are willingly ignorant of, that by the word of Yah the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. Willingly ignorant, that means dumb on purpose. I have to tell you, I'm nobody. I am not a scholar. I am not an astronomer. I'm not a scientist. I don't have PhDs or doctorate letters after my name. And there's a whole lot of people who have a whole lot more education on this than me, and they don't see these things. I don't believe that. I believe they're willingly ignorant. People today want to see what they want to see, and science is not divorced from religion. In fact, science goes to the heart of religion. Everything's religious today, politics included. Who do you worship? It's all about that. And so, for those who know and love Yahweh, they see the obvious, that by the word of Yah were the heavens made of old. I love reading the materials and things by creation scientists for that reason. So by the word of Yah were the heavens made. When we read these things, they literally connect the stars with language. We most often spiritualize away the meaning and pass it off as the psalmist was writing with poetic eloquence, right? But what if the Bible really means what it says about the heavens? What if there really is a language connection between the heavenly bodies of the Mazzaroth and language? And if there is a connection between the sky and the written word, might it be possible that the Creator was teaching the ancient patriarchs to read and write at the same time that he was teaching them the constellation shapes and star names? Language was given by God. He's the first one to speak. Adam and Eve had the ability to speak because he gave it to them. He also taught them reading, writing, all of that. Interestingly enough, many ancient cultures attribute written word to a divine source as well. Same thing as the Mazzaroth itself. I thought this was funny. I just had to put this in here. We look in the heavens and we see things without seeing anything. So this was National Geographic had put this out. Do you see the question mark in the sky?
Yep, in the center of the screen.
And they're like, what is that? Yeah, it looks like a question mark. It's amazing how people will see things when they want to see them, and things that aren't what they're saying. It's not really supposed to be a question mark, I'm quite sure. But the point is, they see things when they want to, and then they don't when it's blatantly obvious, you know. Well, we don't want to be like that. So let's go to our next question. What were the original terms for the constellations? And so we find that in Job 38, verse 31 to 32. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades, which is a star cluster, or loose the bands of Orion? That would be the belt of Orion, through which is the gateway to the throne of Yah. Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Mazzaroth is the word that the pagans have renamed into zodiac. And Mazzaroth is from the Hebrew word, Strong's number H4216. Mazzaroth is the Hebrew word. I mean, that's the Strong's number. And it means constellation, collectively the zodiac for clarity, but that's not, it was the original name. And the root system of this word is to be set apart for sacred purposes. So far from being pagan, the heavens were set apart for sacred purposes. And that is why Satan has been so threatened by them and has worked so hard to muddy the waters and mess it all up. Okay, Genesis 1:14. We talked about this one. Let's look at it. And Yah said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And the word signs is that Hebrew word ot. And it's a signal, a flag, a beacon, a monument, an omen, a prodigy, an evidence, a mark, a token. And ot not only applies to constellations, it applies to letters. To this day, Hebrew letters are called ots. So constellations were it was even known in the naming of them that the constellations were letters. Okay. So what is the original term? Mazzaroth, Job 38:32. And the constellations are called signs in Genesis 1:14 in English. But you will remember that signs is signal, flag, omen, beacon, monument. And it just so happens to be the same name for the letters. So what else do the heavens speak about? Well, for that, we're going to look in Romans 1:18 to 20. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. And I do see that, and I do hold them accountable for that they hold the truth in unrighteousness. One who did that was Hubble, the inventor of the famous telescope. And when he first looked through the telescope, he saw evidence of creation. And he wrote, because for one thing, he saw a mathematically ordered universe. It would have to be random to be the way his story goes. But it wasn't. It isn't. And he saw that, and he wrote in his diary that the most horrific thing that he could ever think of was that the universe was ordered. And he wouldn't tell anybody. He refused to tell anybody that he saw the order that was there, because he knew what that meant, and he refused to say it, and certainly refused to honor it. They hold the truth in unrighteousness. Most definitely they do, and Yah knows what they're doing, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, in everything he's made. Yah, as the creator, is manifest, for Yahweh has showed it unto them. They see it. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Do you know one of the things about the universe? Mathematically ordered. Do you know what they do with that? I mean, really intelligent people today. I'm gonna say a name. Elon Musk. Very, very intelligent man. And he believes that we are living in a computer simulation. There's been several interviews where he's said that. He doesn't believe we're even in the first generation of it, but multiple generations of it down there. And so we are in a computer simulation. Why? Because of the mathematical perfection of everything. Storms are based upon pi and the proportion. I really think that might be God's mathematical name. The nautilus shell, the human DNA. DNA is a language, and everyone knows that language only comes from an intelligent mind. So we've got people like Richard Dawkins, who wrote The God Delusion. He's one of the leading atheists in the world. And in an interview with Ben Stein, he said, I would rather believe in aliens or fairies in the garden. When confronted with the idea that DNA is a language. You know, you're walking on the beach one day, an old ancient stone tablet has washed up. There's writing on the stone tablet. You can't read it, but you know writing when you see it. And you know very well the ocean didn't randomly do that writing, because writing only comes from an intelligent mind. So even if you can't read it, you know somebody with a mind wrote that. DNA is a language. Mic drop. Okay? And also the mathematical perfection. I want to show you a little bit on the mathematical perfection of the universe that has caused some very smart people to do a very, very foolish thing. They believe we live in a simulation rather than that we have a creator. Yah is amazing. And he says they are without excuse. He's right.
Amen.
The wrath of God is being revealed from the heavens against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So, what else is the heavens speaking about? It's speaking about God's wrath, his coming judgment against lawlessness, and the fact that he is the mighty Aleph, his power and Godhead. Yes, the gospel is in the heavens. And you would recognize those to be elements of the gospel. All right, with that little dip into the session 2, we're going to flip back to page 7 in your worksheet. And let's go ahead and deal with that bottom part that we haven't done yet. We studied the everlasting gospel this week, didn't we? What is the everlasting gospel? Revelation 14, verse 6. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to them that dwell on the earth, to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. And here it is, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made the heavens and the earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. And as we saw in 1 Peter 4:17, you can't obey the message that Yeshua died on the cross. That is not fully it, is it? And so 1 Peter 4:17, for the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of God. The standard of judgment is the Torah. It is by keeping Torah that we fear God. This is the whole duty of man. Fear God, keep his commandments. How do we give glory to him? Good works. What works are good? Obedience, submitted to him. Worship him that made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains of waters. How do you do that? By keeping the Sabbath. It was the day given to honor him as creator. He set that up, right? So, we understand how Scripture can say that Yeshua was preaching the gospel prior to his death, and that we see judgment coming in the end. And if it begin first at us, what shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel? Yes, the gospel is to be obeyed. It has to do with that covenant, the Torah. Let's look at the first star family, and we're looking for these branch prophecies in the sky. The first in the plan of redemption is the woman. She is known as the virgin, Betula in Hebrew, and I will call her the ruined bride of Christ. Ruined because she starts out in a state of ruin. Lamentations 2:13 uses the name of this constellation. What thing shall I take to witness for thee? What thing shall I liken to thee, O daughter of Jerusalem? What shall I equal to thee, that I may comfort thee, O Betula, virgin daughter of Zion? For thy breach is great, like the sea. Who can heal thee? And then in Jeremiah 14:17, it says, Therefore thou shalt say this word unto them, Let mine eyes run down with tears night and day, and let them not cease. For the Betula, the virgin daughter of my people, is broken with a great breach, with a very grievous blow. The breach is why the woman is like falling in the heavens. It is the chasm that separates sinful man from a holy God. And that breach is created by sin. When there is a breach, we say, is there a breach in protection? Breach in the hedge, like happened, Yah's hedge of protection that's about his people. So the breach is not only the chasm, it is a gap in the protection of the Almighty through which Satan can target the individual. They are left defenseless. So to have a breach is a very, very deadly and dangerous thing. And this woman starts out with a breach. One of the deacons of this primary star family, Betula, is the coming one. And this is Bo, ancient name, which means the coming one. And this shows the twofold ministry and role of Messiah. Messiah as shepherd and judge. Now, in one hand, he's holding the ancient lamed, which is the shepherd's crook. It's the oat that goes for the L, and it has to do with the ox goad of authority, and it goes with the word for keep. Shamar, goad into, keep the Torah of Yah. The shepherd protects, he delivers, and he goads his people into the path of life and out of darkness and destruction. On the other hand, he's holding the symbol of the Zayin. And in that symbol, we have the cutting, the harvesting, the harvester. Revelation 14:14, and I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle, representing judgment, the harvest. And it says in Psalms 96, let the field be joyful, and all that is therein. Then shall all the trees of the wood rejoice before Yahweh, for he cometh, this is Bo, for he cometh to judge the earth. He shall judge the world with righteousness and the people with his truth. And we think of judgment as a scary thing, but I want to remind you that eternal life is also a judgment. Okay? Judgment is either eternal life or eternal death based upon whether we have allowed him to keep us in his fold with the lamed, with the shepherd's crook, if we have followed the way of the shepherd or not. Next, we have the promise of redemption in Chemda. Chemda, the woman and child, which the Greeks renamed and reshaped this constellation and made it Bernice's hair. It's ridiculous. Even Shakespeare wrote of this constellation that it was the virgin with the good boy on her lap. So even into that time, it was known. Now, the name of this constellation, Chemda, means the desire of nations. And that is a term that had to do with the fact that every mother wanted to have this seed bring it into the world, ever since the promise in Genesis 3:15. And so the desire of nations was the one that would destroy the serpent. Semiramis, the fake, claimed to have the desire of nations. That's what she claimed Tammuz to be, that he is your savior. The desire of nations is indeed the savior. Haggai 2:7, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations, that's Chemda, the name of this constellation, shall come. And I will fill this house with glory, saith Yahweh of hosts. And then in Isaiah 9 verse 6, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Did you know that the child that was born was the Everlasting Father? People don't usually connect that. They lessen him because of his title, Son of God. But they forget that the fact is, he said, before Abraham was, I am. He manifested in the flesh. And that's why he could say, before Abraham was, I am. He came to demonstrate sonship so that we could all be sons of the living God. Following his example, him dying in our place, sonship means more than that he's a lesser being. And Genesis 3:15, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, it being the seed, Yeshua HaMashiach, and thou shalt bruise his heel. The serpent would do that work. So then we have the third deacon of the virgin, and that's Asham Baza. Now this one really is a lion man. Asham Baza means offering for sin, and he was a lion man to show us God being manifest in the flesh. Yeshua is the lion of the tribe of Judah. Yeshua is the lion of the tribe of Judah. It is not Judah that is the lion. It is Yeshua that is the lion. Okay? So he is the lion man to show you, lest there be any question, that God was manifest in the flesh. Okay? 2 Timothy 3:16. It's not going to surprise anybody, I'm sure, to discover that the constellation message is in perfect alignment with your Bible. Right? Yah wrote both. Okay? So what is the gospel message? The future bride of Christ was facing ruin from sin, but she had hope in that the desire of nations would come. And, you know, Yeshua once said, Moses wrote of me. And we think, well, I don't know. I can't find that spot in the Torah. I don't see the name of Jesus in there. And it's true. It isn't in there. But Yeshua is. And we just forget because we read the Bible in English. Here's an example of where Yeshua is found in Torah. Exodus 15, verse 2. Yahweh is my strength and song. He is become my salvation. It literally says he is become my Yeshua. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation, my Father's God, and I will exalt him. You know, one day, the accusation is going to be there that we are idolatrous because we worship Yahweh and we worship Yeshua. We have a couple of names, a couple of revelations, and they're going to say the very heart of the Torah is Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one, and you are violating that with your Yeshua, and we're going to say, no, we are not, because Yah was manifested in the flesh. Isaiah 9, verse 6, he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Everlasting Father. Yahweh has become my Yeshua. Okay? Whereas there's not two gods. And Yeshua very much is God. All right. The next part of the gospel message is found in the scales. And this is not a distorted constellation. It has been the scales for a very long time. And people usually see that, recognize that, and draw it correctly. Do you remember the story of Belshazzar in the kingdom when he was doing these terrible things with having a drunken party with the holy vessels from the temple? And Daniel is called in to translate because some Proto-Canaanite was written on the wall, also known as Proto-Semitic. I'll show you that in a moment. But that was the first language, I think heaven's language, for a number of reasons. So it was written, and it said, many, many tickle Upharsin, and it meant, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. What are we talking about? That was the scales in the sky. A well-known constellation, which had been reproduced on a number of stones and things throughout Babylon. They were very familiar with this constellation. And thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Now, if that message is given, do you know what that means? You're done. That's death. And did indeed death come to Belshazzar?
Yes.
Absolutely. So to be weighed in the balances and found wanting is a very, very sobering message. Now this is Mosaneum, meaning the scales, and the truth of it is we all face the scales of judgment. Scales were used in biblical times for a number of things. They were used to show justice and judgment because in the marketplace, if you went in to buy something, you would measure your payment on one side of the scale, and on the other side, your merchant would measure out what you were buying, and the scales would balance if it was a fair transaction. So it came to be, this is fairness, this is justice, this is righteousness, that the scales are balanced, that symbol, okay? And so purchase price, redemption, all that concept is in the scales as well. And so in Job 31:6, referring to judgment, Job asks to be measured and weighed in the Mosaneum. Let me be weighed in an even balance, that my God may know my integrity. And in 1 Corinthians 6:20, for ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. We were bought. The scales were balanced. What was the payment? What was the payment? Okay, well, if that question arises with these scales, because the scales are only clear that payment has happened, they're not clear on what was the payment, we'll look to the deacons. Because the deacons are the three supporting constellations, and they add detail to creating the whole message in the star family. Okay, so this is the second star family. And in this star family, we have the deacons. Let's look at them carefully. The first is the northern crown. We've been looking at that at campfire time. The northern crown is Atara, meaning the crown of life. And in Messiah, we may have life. The crown represents everlasting life. James 1:12, blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the sovereign hath promised to them that love him. And in Revelation 3:11, it says, behold, I come quickly. Hold fast what thou hast, that no man take thy crown, meaning that you would lose eternal life. The crown represents eternal life. Now, as I've mentioned in our campfire times, the crown up there is directly connected with the serpent. How? Because the serpent is trying to steal the crown. Okay, so see, here's Nakash is the name of this constellation. And this represents the deceiver, Satan, who is through seductive means and deceptions and temptations, reaching his head up to steal this away. And the only reason he doesn't succeed is because of who is battling him. This is spiritual warfare at its essence. This is Gibor. Gibor, the mighty man, the strong man, representing Yeshua HaMashiach. And he does battle with a snake, not while we sit back in our easy chairs, but while we use the heavenly weapons that he has provided. And he says, fight the good fight of faith. And in the future, there is laid up a crown of life, right? So now let's go to the next deacon, which is Adam. This one is in the southern hemisphere. And in the southern hemisphere, it is a timekeeper, like the North Star is for us. Sailors used to be able to tell time by looking at the heavens. And so in the southern hemisphere, if you were at midnight, the cross would be straight up and down, vertical from the horizon. And so after that, sailors were known to say, the midnight is past, the cross begins to bend. Okay? And so guess what Hebrew letter goes with the cross? Can you see it there? Yes. That's the Tav, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the way it was drawn in Proto-Canaanite is exactly that. I used to think that the cross was pagan, that we wanted nothing to do with the cross, and then I discovered that that was yet another symbol that had been stolen. The cross is the Tav, and that is a very righteous symbol. Messiah was cut off on the Tav. Adam literally means the cutting of the covenant. So he's telling you the scales have to be balanced in payment, and I am putting my own blood. Now, this I can tell you, having never been there. But if you travel for all eternity throughout the entire universe and see all the wonders that Yah has out there, and I'm sure there have got to be things that don't exist on our periodic table. There are valuable things out there that we've never seen or heard of. But whatever wonders might be out there, and indeed are out there, I'm sure, the one thing that is worth more than anything else is the substance that was paid for your salvation and mine. The blood of Yeshua HaMashiach. There is no higher bride price. There is nothing higher that can be done or paid. And so that is what balanced the scale, which tells you how heavy the scale was on terms of sinfulness. How heavy to have to put something that valuable to balance the scale. Daniel 9:26 says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. That's a direct reference to Adam, the cutting of the covenant, the cutting off, the death of. but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant, cutting of the covenant, ratifying the covenant, confirming the covenant, done in his blood. This is what he was doing on the cross. And that shape is exactly what it had to be done on. You know, there were times in the crucifixion story when they weren't even in charge of their own mouth. Pilate says, I find no fault in him. The high priest, for generations, over the Passover lamb, would examine it for any problem and at that precise moment say, I find no fault in him. I don't think Pilate knew that, but he said it at that right moment. And Yeshua, the Romans had no knowledge of the Tav being the sign of the covenant. They were oblivious to the covenant. But Yah was involved in all of this and orchestrating it. And he had told us where his blood would be shed. And it was on a Tav, exactly as he told us it would have to be. Now, you see there, ghosted in on the right-hand side, you see a Shambaza, which we talked about. That's one of the deacons of the prior star family. And so we know who that is. That's God manifested in the flesh. That's Yeshua. And he's got this spear in his hand. And the spear is piercing into one of the deacons here of the scales. And this deacon is a wolf, a Sida, the slain wolf. And we'd say, wait a minute, the victim here, who is this that's being killed at the Savior's hand? It's him in both cases. It's him in both cases, for he said, I lay down my life willingly, none can take it from me. Could Yeshua not get himself down from the cross? Didn't he have the power to do that?
Sure he did.
He absolutely did. And so he willingly laid his life down for us. He stayed there, knowing that he needed to do that. So how can he, who is the innocent lamb in the closest representation, how can he be manifesting as a wolf? Well, in this case, the wolfishness has to do with sin. Wolf is sometimes in Scripture used as a Benjamin will raven as a wolf. And Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin, and he compares himself to that when he thirsted for the saints' blood, to raven as a wolf. And later he was transformed, and so that concept is to be changed. But Yeshua was made to be sin for us. So he is the slayer and the victim. And the reason for the wolf is because Messiah died for my wolfishness and yours. Praise his holy name. And so the gospel message here is that he was condemned for our sins in which he had no share, so that we could receive his righteousness in which we had no share. We are bought with the precious price of his blood. Now, I once heard a story of a young man, true story. He had stowed away on a ship back in the 1800s. And so he was hiding. Nobody knew he was there. Occasionally coming out of his hiding place, sneaking food, sneaking water. But nobody noticed. And one day, the ship hit disaster. And it was going down. And the captain ordered everybody into the lifeboats and off the ship. And there was enough space because the captain was a good planner and they had enough space. They just didn't have enough space for an extra body who wasn't supposed to be there. And so the young man came rushing up onto the deck, realizing he better reveal himself or he was dead. And he did not know that there was only enough space in the lifeboats for the people that were supposed to be on the ship. And so he ran to the captain and he said, Captain, I'm sorry. I'm here. I stowed away. Please, can I get in the lifeboat? And the captain didn't even pause. Get right in here. Never told him, I'm giving you my spot. They pushed off to get far away from the ship, because when a ship goes down, it sucks everything down. You got to be away from the ship. And so they're busy getting rowed out, get away, get away, get away. Finally, as they're far enough away from the ship, then they can turn around and watch it as it's kind of canting up and getting ready to sink down into the sea. And it's then that they realize, wait a minute, the captain is not here. Where's the captain? Is he in your boat? Nope, he's not here. And they knew then that he was on the ship. Now, up to that point, that young man had been living a life that was absolutely a waste of breath, and he knew it. He had been stealing his way. In fact, he was on this ship so that he could get away from the law that he had righteously brought down against him, because it wasn't his righteousness. and here he is, and he realizes the price that has been paid for him. Just in that split second, the captain knew what he was doing. The young man did not know. And after that, do you know what he did? It changed his life. And he would carry a picture that he was able to get a hold of that captain. An old picture. And he would say, this man, he died for me. I'm alive today because of him. And it changed my life. I have decided to live thankful. And you know, should Yeshua's death do less? The third aspect of the star families, coming into the third star family, is spiritual warfare all throughout. It's a crab, and a crab is the stinging scorpion. And this is the constellation that is telling us about deliverance from the serpent's sting, because you see the scorpion represents everlasting death. And that is the sting that's in his tail. This is what Paul was talking about when he said in 1 Corinthians 15:55 and 56, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Clearly, Paul knew the Torah in the heavens as well, because that's where that symbol is for eternal death, being the scorpion's sting. In Psalms 144:1, we find the name of this constellation. Blessed be Yahweh, my strength, which teacheth my hands to a crab, to war, and my fingers to fight. Because Yah doesn't just deliver us while we stay in our slime pit. He delivers us from it. And as we use the heavenly weapons, submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Don't submit to God, don't resist the devil, and he'll be all over you. Right? We have a part to play. And so this is that warfare concept for victorious Christian living. And in 2 Corinthians 10:3 and 4, it says, For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now, the heavens are not just one constellation. Oh, look at that one. Okay. It's a tapestry. They are all interwoven and connected in a very pictorial way. So Genesis 3:15 is being shown in the heavens. The scorpion is under the strong man. It is swinging its tail up in preparation to sting him in the heel. Now I have to tell you something real quick. In the year that Yeshua died, there was a supernatural darkening of the sky. Why do I say supernatural? Because it was not a solar eclipse. I can prove that. It is impossible for a solar eclipse to happen on Passover. Why? Because Passover is the 14th day of the biblical month, which brings you close to a full moon phase. Right? Full moon. There is no such thing as the moon being able to block the sun when it's on the opposite side of the earth so that it's in the full moon phase. When it blocks the sun is when it's on the other side and we see a dark moon. We call that the conjunction. And it's not yet the new moon until you have that first visible sliver. So when the moon is not even in view at all, it's just the dark moon, that's when you can have a solar eclipse. Yeshua died on the 14th day. it would have been a full moon, not a dark moon. The sun is on the opposite side. The moon is on, I should say the moon is on the opposite side. And so the sky went dark when Yeshua died. Yah just turned out the lights because that was a supernatural act. And he did it because something was very important going on. He wanted everyone's attention on what was happening. And so right there, that beautiful full Passover moon moved into the heel of the strong man. The first time I saw that and played that back on Starry Night Pro to see what was happening at the moment of the slaying of the Passover lamb, the Bible tells you what time to look. And when you do the math and the studying of what was the Jubilee year, et cetera, all of this is going to be in my Synchronizing the Gospel series regarding the timing. But when you look at that moment that he died, there was the full Passover moon in his heel. Why the moon? Because the moon represents the woman, the bride that he has come to save. Moon in Hebrew is Levana, which means the one who is clothed in white. His righteousness. The moon doesn't have its own light. It reflects the light from the sun. He's the source of the light, reflected from her, reflected out. The moon is the woman, just as Jacob knew when Joseph had the vision and dream of the sun, moon, and stars bowing down to him. And Jacob says to him, without having to research, fast and pray to discover what it means, he says, shall your mother and I and your brethren bow down to you? Because he understood that the woman was the moon. Okay? So this is an old, well-known thing. And so why the moon in the foot? Because Yah was saying, for my bride, for my woman, I am taking it in the heel right now at this very moment. Genesis 3:15 is what we are seeing in the sky. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it, the seed of the woman, Gibor, the mighty man, he will bruise your head. Now, here, next to, on the right-hand side, you see a constellation cluster that's actually inverted from, I've played them next to each other so you can see each other, but they actually go up almost straight. And so you have that very same strong man battling some fruit representing the works of the flesh. And he is stepping on the head of the snake, the dragon snake. That is crushing his head, and this was bruising his heel. Gibor is the mighty warrior. In Messiah, we have victory over sin. Jeremiah 20, verse 11, but Yahweh is with me as a mighty and terrible one. And that's a Gibor. Therefore, my persecutors shall stumble. They shall not prevail. They shall be greatly ashamed, for they shall not prosper. Their everlasting confusion shall not be forgotten. There's a connection with Babylon in there. See it? And Gibor is the one that does that. And what does it say in 1 Corinthians 15? O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law, meaning that we have just cause to die because sin is transgression of the law, so therefore we have a good strong case to die. But then in verse 57, but thanks be to our God, which giveth us the victory through our sovereign Yeshua Messiah. Now, Nakash. Nakash is the snake. It's one of the deacons, and it is connected with Gibor in that it runs across the body of, because he's in battle with it. And Nakash literally means the whispering snake. And whispering means the uttering of magical spells and deceptions and all the things that you would think of. You know, you used to have in the old days, they used to have the angel sit on one shoulder and then the demons sit on the other and whisper in the ear. Well, that comes from this idea of Nakash, the whispering snake, trying to put attitudes and ideas into our minds and what is he doing? What's his purpose in all of that? He is the one who tries to steal our crown. But Psalms 91:13, thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. In the power of Yeshua and in his heavenly weapons, we can be victorious. And that's what this star family is all about. The gospel was never about no victory. Yeshua paid it all, and that's the end of it. Oh, no. Victory over sin. Obedience to Yah. Defeating the snake. And the great dragon was cast out. We know who the dragon is, Revelation 12:9. The old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. That's his role. And then we have Bao, which is the coming one. And here the message is to be cleansed of the serpent fruits. The gospel is all about Torah. Cleansing, forgiveness, and establishment in righteousness. 1 John 3:8, he that committeth sin is of the devil. What is sin? Transgression of the law. For the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whosoever is born of God does not commit sin, for his seed remains in him, and he cannot sin, because he is born of God. Galatians tells us the works of the flesh, which are embodied in these unholy fruits that you see the strong man clubbing. Things like adultery, fornication, licentiousness, sorcery, contentions, wrath, envy, drunkenness, dissensions, uncleanness, idolatry, hatred, jealousy, selfish ambition, heresies, murders, revelries. These are things that are listed in Galatians 5 as works of the flesh, contrasted with the fruits of the Holy Spirit. And the Bible says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. Do you see statutes and commandments in those fruits? Breaking of them. Yes. So the gospel is deeply connected with Torah. Spiritual warfare involves victory over the serpent's fruits. Using spiritual weapons in Christ, we resist temptation and have victory. And we shouldn't think of temptation as just being thoughts. Temptation is also emotions. The big deal is that when you're tempted, you're not going to want to have victory. You're going to feel like you want to fall. And you have to battle against that as well. Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee. Okay, so that's the gospel in short in the heavens as it was given. And I can't even imagine how wonderful it must have been to go to church at night with Enoch and hear that in far greater depth, I'm sure. Now, going back to our concept here for the second workshop, what if there actually is a connection between the heavenly bodies and the Maseroth, the heavenly bodies of the Maseroth and language? Psalms 33:6, by the word of Yahweh were the heavens made. Well, if there were a connection between the heavens and language, what language would it be? It would be the first language, wouldn't it? Of course. It would be the original language. Now, based on the list of descendants of Noah given in Genesis 10, which is known as the Table of Nations, many scholars believe that there were 70 nations who spoke 70 distinct languages after the division of the language which took place at the Tower of Babel. Today, of course, that number has increased exponentially. They have Afrikaans and Zulu and Italian and Japanese. And in fact, there are currently 7,117 known languages spoken by people around the world, according to the Ethnologue, which is widely considered to be the most extensive catalog of languages in the world. So certainly, if the constellations were linked with language, they would assuredly be linked to the first original language, the one that was spoken by Adam and Eve and Noah, and in fact all the world, up to the confounding of the languages, which took place at the infamous Tower of Babel in Genesis chapter 11, about 700 years after the flood. In Genesis 11, verse 6, it says, "Behold, the people is one. They have all one language." Okay? So how many languages were there in the beginning? One. Who gave that language? God. So then I love to ask questions. And sometimes they seem like the toughest questions ever. What was the first language? Don't you want to know? I did. And I wondered, could you know that? I mean, Daniel knew it. He could read that language when it was written on the wall for Belshazzar. He also knew the Maseroth very, very well. All right. So this is it. This is what it looks like. And I get so excited seeing these things. Do you know these characters are found all over the earth? They are. They are in the oldest representations of art. They are in paleoliths. They are in caves. And they are in every part of the earth. So up to the beginning of the 20th century, the Mesha stele, which is also called the Moabite stone, a royal inscription of King Moab, whose name was Mesha, going back to about 850 BC. That stone was the earliest known alphabetic inscription. But earlier examples of a far older language have been found. Studies of these ancient letter forms have been rocking the scientific community, convincing many that the original alphabet has now been found. And interestingly enough, I'm quite sure that they're right, that this is the original alphabet, because this is the language that was still spoken by the children of Israel in the wilderness. And it is found in the archaeological finds called the Sinaitic inscriptions. All throughout between Egypt to Canaan, they wrote in this language. And God's people kept the original language because they did not participate in the Tower of Babel. So we have the Aleph, which looks like the bull's head. Now, depending on who the artist is that's carving the letter, it could look slightly different, but it's very interesting. You can always tell it's the Aleph. You always see the bull's head. You've got the bait, and that appears in a number of ways. Sometimes it can appear like a square coming into almost like the shell. And then we have the Gimel, and we have the Dalet, which is the door. And it can look like a tent door. And then we have the Hay, which is the stick man. Okay. We have the Vav, looking like the nail and the peg. We have the Zayin, a couple of ways that could appear. The Chet, or Ket, and that one looks like a fence, which is what it is. We have the Tate, which is the cross with the circle on it. And the Yod, with the hand, the works. The Kaf, the Lamed. You see the shapes, okay? And these shapes appear, no matter where you are, all over the world. This one shows the evolution of the letters. So you go from the way the Hebrew letter is drawn today to Proto-Hebrew, and then back to Middle Egyptian hieroglyphics, and then and you go all the way back, and that is where we get our capital A from today. The capital A is the upside down bull's head in an angular way, with the two legs of the A being the horns. And it came out of that letter, and Frank Seekins does an excellent job documenting how letters came to be. And so if you watch the evolution of the letter coming from the original bull's head, and then how it looked as Proto-Canaanite, and how it looked as early Phoenician Hebrew, how it looked at the Pool of Siloam, how it, Proto-Canaanite is actually the name of the original, so that name should have been down a little bit lower, sorry. And how it looked as it moved into the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and now the Aleph in modern Hebrew. Going from the sideways looking A, we get to the Etruscan, and then the Latin, and then the modern English. So all of that is, but today we've got that coming from that root system, but our A doesn't mean everything that the Aleph means. We've lost the meaning of the letter. So, as the 2019 Encyclopedia Britannica documents, Proto-Canaanite, also called Proto-Sinaitic or Early Alphabetic, has been found in ancient inscriptions and fragments dating to the Middle Bronze Age, and they are considered, quote, the earliest trace of alphabetic writing and the common ancestor of both the ancient South Arabian script and the Phoenician alphabet. They used to think Phoenician was the oldest, and they now know that it isn't. They used to think cuneiform, and they now know that that isn't. So this is the earliest trace of alphabetic writing. Here we have some examples of the Sinai inscriptions. And so this dates back to 1446. The historic discovery began in the winter of 1904-1905 when Sir William Flinders Petrie discovered the inscriptions at Serabit el-Qadam. And the studies of the alphabetic writing on the inscriptions revealed that this language was likely the parent language of early alphabetic scripts. the ancient writing became known as Proto-Semitic or Proto-Canaanite. An exhibition of the catalog of his catalog was published in 1905, and he put out an expedition report in 1906. And so here, the ancient Near East Today had put out an article, Hebrew as the language behind the world's first alphabet. This is by Douglas Petrovich, because they can see the connection to Hebrew, even though it's not modern Hebrew. Now, interestingly enough, this is a Semitic language. The original language was Semitic. Now, that's significant. Semitic means it was from Shem. Shemitic. And Shem did not participate in the Tower of Babel, nor did anybody who followed Shem. He was resisting that. Here are a few examples. Proto-Semitic Hebrew from the Exodus. They found all kinds of amazing things. I've got a lot more of them coming out in my book, but I'll show you just a few pictures. Moses' name is on this one. It's talking about Moses. His name is in the lower right corner, but look at how the letters look. Have you ever seen petroglyphs? Seriously, have you ever seen petroglyphs?
No.
Well, we were in the Valley of Fire State Park about a month ago. And when we were there, we were driving past the gatehouse, and I've been looking at these letters for a bit. I know them when I see them. And there they were on the gatehouse. And I'm like, oh, there are petroglyphs here. And I was so excited. Let's see those petroglyphs. Guess who made them? Native American people living about an hour outside of Las Vegas. And they were writing this language. And the people in the museum there date these things to, can you believe it? 1440s BC. That's about the time of the Exodus. There were Shemites. And I've heard that Native American people are descended from Shem. But you can sure see it in the language. So this stone has a few characters that you can see, and I'll try to make it easier to see. There is the Kaf. There is the Chet, the fence. There's the Aleph. There's the Ayin. Here we have a spearhead with some of these symbols. We've got the Resh. We've got Samek, at the bottom. So they might be weathered with time, but you can still see these characters. And this is what they looked like. Now, this is from the land of Israel. I think it's interesting. This ivory comb was found at Tel Lachish, the archaeological site in southern Israel, and it bears the inscription, translated, "May this ivory tusk root out the lice of the hair and the beard." So they say that this dates back to some 3,700 years ago, and this was published in the Jerusalem Journal of Archaeology. This one. Now, it's very interesting when you read these journals and these writings about Proto-Semitic. They don't want to give Yah credit. They don't want to say that this was the children of Israel. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and say unequivocally, they talk about Moses, they talk about Joseph, they talk about hallelujah. This was the children of Israel writing on those rocks. I'm convinced. Okay. And so I'm not going to dance around it. I'm going to tell you. This particular translation here, it says, Jehovah of peace, awesome, God of all, the great united nations of Egypt. So he is the God of all, even Egypt. And then it has hallelujah. What does that mean? Praise to Yah. Yeah. Now, the original language was a set of written characters that represented syllables. We call them syllabaries. And it also, it's a written language, a logogram, and a logograph or lexicograph, which is where a written character represents a word. Okay, so this is a very logographic language where a written character represents a word and where the characters represent syllables and words. And that was the original language. It was syllabaries and logographies. which means letters represent syllables and they also represent whole words. The earliest examples of alphabetic writing come from locations in Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. The creators of the language of these texts were who? Hebrew. That's by Robert Humbrat on the invention of the alphabet. Yes, ancient Hebrew is in the sky, not Hebrew as you would have it today. And yes, by the word of Yah, the heavens were made. Now, I had to show you, I thought this was fascinating. I watched a TED Talk by Dr. Genevieve von Petzinger in 2015. And she is interesting to me because she is a doctor of cave writing. And so she has traveled the world and personally investigated over 200 caves. Now, I would love to be able to say that I'd done that. How exciting to see these things for yourself. Yep. And she said she won't give them language credit, but she does say that they are clearly more than random doodles. In fact, she said if these were random doodles or decorations, we would expect to see a lot more variation. But instead, what we see, notice the word she used, are the same signs. What are signs? The same signs repeating across both space and time. Now, in the evolutionary timeline, some of these sites with these letters date back to 40,000 years ago, and I don't believe that for one bit. I believe the genealogies are correct, and so I would say that it's accurate to say that they date back to the time just after the flood. I don't think anything survived the flood in terms of those things, because you can see what happens when tremendous forces of water work against rock, and cave paintings don't survive, and so this is just after the flood. So that's a good long time ago, just not 40,000 years ago. All right, so we're looking on page 10 of your magazine now. What language was globally used until the Tower of Babel about 700 years after the flood? And that would be the Proto-Canaanite Hebrew. And what are some unique features of this written language? The answer would be that written characters are words and alphabet letters. They are both words and alphabet letters. Remember me mentioning that an individual letter is a whole sermon of meaning? And that's the word part of it. Okay. And so, interestingly enough, that little diagram that you see in the right hand, that is a diagram showing the star locations of the constellations that are being depicted in the famous Hall of the Bulls, Lascaux, France. I'm sorry to say that no one could go into that cave anymore. They've closed it off because they're afraid that the paintings are going to be damaged. But they call that the oldest art on Earth. Guess what the oldest art on Earth is all about? The Mazzaroth. And within the Mazzaroth, paintings and representations, whether that's in monoliths or whatever. And by the way, they did use monoliths too. But whatever it is, it always is mixed with the ancient letters. And so when we were in the Valley of Fire State Park, we were driving around the road, kind of Snake's Path, and there's this huge stone grouping, this cluster of stones, and they look like stone, 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 stone coming to a point. And there's these 7 stones. And the Native Americans had a name for those 7 stones coming to a point, like an arrowhead. They called them the 7 Sisters. And you find that all over the world. Pleiades is the most repeated star cluster. And so they had a representation of Pleiades, and it just makes you want to burst when you walk into the museum there, and it's like, we don't know what these things say, and we don't know why they call it the 7 Sisters. And I'm like, let me tell you, I'm so excited because this is God's stuff. All right. So National Geographic did an amazing portrayal on Chantal Joug-Vogelwitz studying the cave of Lascaux. And it was this documentary movie that came out on National Geographic, and I watched it with absolute fascination. And Dr. Vogelwitz believes that the cave in Lascaux, France, was created by someone in caveman times. So this is ancient Stone Age stuff to it, the evolutionary mind, okay? And she said, to their amazement, it's challenging the idea of the caveman, because they are finding that people back then, whoever created this cave, that they designed the cave to be viewed on the Tekufa. Let me show you why. The paintings are where the light penetrates only at the time of the Tekufa. And so the caves that have paintings in them, normally the sun would penetrate like about this far into the cave, but on the Tekufa, it penetrates all the way back and lights up those cave walls. And so this happens at the time of the equinox. Now outside, as National Geographic documented, there are these arrows carved into the rock face, the slab that they call the altar stone in the Valley of Marvels. It has 115 arrows. There, I'll try to trace a few so you can see them. They're a little weathered. But the arrow points converge to the place where the sun rises on the equinox. So they are showing them, hey, pay attention. When the sunrise happens here, go into the cave and see what's there. And when you do go into the cave, the first thing you find is the Valley of the Bulls. Now, this would be the Hall of the Bulls. And this was extremely important because the bull was the constellation for Joseph, and it was the one that the sun visually entered into the bull at the time of the beginning of the year, the spring Tekufa. And so the bull is being represented all over in here. And there also are dots representing the location of stars. You can see the mighty Reim constellation. You can also see Orion constellation. And one of the things that Dr. Volkovitz discovered is that if the cave system were made of glass, the star dots are so accurate that if it were made of glass, they would be exactly where the stars were at the time of the paintings. And that is remarkable. We would have a hard time doing that even with GPS. And they did it. So here's one of those pictures. You can see Reim, and now called Taurus, and you can see Orion there. And you see how the star dots appear. Now above the bull is the Pleiades. See how it kind of looks like an arrow of dots? That's that star cluster. Now, it's becoming well known. Now, Dr. Volkovitz has visited 130 cave sites featuring Paleolithic drawings. So she's an expert on caves as well. And she has identified believed solar alignments throughout the seasons, and it has led her to claim that 122 of the 130 sites had optimal orientations for the Tekufas. I'm saying Tekufa, that's a Hebrew word, but that's where they were. For the sun to penetrate them at that time, that's why they picked those caves. Now at the 2000 International Conference on Cave Art in Val Camonica, Italy, Dr. Volkovitz made the claim that the people who painted the Lascaux cave were astronomers, and that they were painting the zodiac on the walls of the cave, not the zodiac. She has proposed that the Lascaux cave paintings record the constellations of a prehistoric version of the zodiac, because after all, there's a slight shift in the heavens from how it was, and that the timing for going into these caves would clearly be the time of the equinox, in order to have the bathe of light throughout the cave. Interestingly enough, they also found a bone, and on the bone were carvings of moon phases. So these people who were so interested in the timing of the Tekufa were also paying attention to the moon phases. Now, who does that? There's that bone. If the caves were made of glass, they would perfectly show where the stars were. Wow. These people were not just students of the Mazzaroth, they were astronomers. And this was how Yah's people were, but it makes perfect sense when you understand that for the first 2,000 years after the fall, this was the Word of God. How did we lose it? We need it back. This is a diagram that I made. It's actually one of the art pieces that's in my new book. And in this diagram, I took Dr. Genevieve Petzinger's research where she said, this is what I found in this cave, this is what I found in that cave, and whatever she said she found in all these caves, I found the caves and put a dot on the map. That's where it is, that's where it is, that's where it is. And this is what she saw in those caves. And we have her research, her work. I never got myself to see any of these personally until about a month ago, and I was so excited. But as you can see, they are all over the world. North America, yes. Now on my map, I don't show, because I'm going on her research, I don't show the one that was at the Valley of Fire. Maybe I got to add that to the art piece. But anyway, we've got North Africa. We've got these things in Europe, right? They are all over the world. Here's South America. And we've got the Tav and the Bait and the Sadi and the Mem and the Pe and the Chet and the Bait and the Hyades and Pleiades, which are 2 star clusters on the bull. Sometimes the Kaf is done as the silhouette of a hand. We've got Central Africa. There we go with more. East Africa. Here's Southern Africa. Here we have Australia, Borneo, Malaysia, Myanmar, China, India. They are all over the world. And this is just what Dr. Petzinger found in the caves she personally went into, which means there's a lot more cave systems, because she will admittedly and of herself tell you she's not been in them all. So she actually wrote a book called The First Signs. I think that's a perfect name. That is exactly what they are. They are the first signs. Unlocking the mysteries of the world's oldest symbols. She's not willing to call it an alphabet, but it sure was. And so that TED Talk, if you want to see it, was on December 18, 2015, where she talks about that. And she says she's been hiking, crawling, and wriggling around 52 sites all over the world. And she has found signs at 75% of the sites she's visited. She has personally spent over 300 hours underground at the time of giving that TED Talk. And she's been through France and Spain and Portugal and Sicily. And she said, if these were random doodles or decorations, we would expect to see a lot more variation. But instead, what we find are the same signs repeating across both space and time. Here are some examples of cave doodles. This is an inscription from the La Pasiga, Spain. And here you see the Kaf, if you're wondering, the letter for holiness. And you see the hand sign, which is, I can't say Kuf and Kaf. There we go. And here we find star signs. You're going to find lots and lots of star signs amidst these ancient Maseroth depictions are with these letter signs. Because after all, they're both oats. So what evidence exists on Earth to connect this original language with the constellations? Well, the oldest art on Earth found in caves all over the world is Maseroth themed. The paintings and star symbols are mixed with Proto-Canaanite. And that's the letters that are found in most of the caves. How widespread is the language and knowledge of the stars? It's found all over the world across cultures. And what part of the constellation record has changed the most over the time? And that would be the asterisms, because the original asterisms were the Proto-Canaanite Hebrew letters. And so one of the things that I needed to do for my book on the ancient Hebrew and the stars is I needed to find which letters went with which constellations. And I did put that art on a mug, by the way. I have that mug back there. If anybody wants to, you can take that home. But this is the art piece. So now you can see which constellations go with which Proto-Canaanite letter, the ancient Hebrew in the stars. And when you connect the meaning that is in the letter with the meaning that is known and in the constellation, it's just like, boom. It deepens, it's just like, wow, and they go together so perfectly. Now, I don't have time to prove all that to you. That's what I'm trying to do in the book, but I do want to show you just a couple of them. The Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the Tav is the last. And Yeshua said, I am the Alpha and Omega. That would be the Greek version of I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And that's Revelation 22:13. So here, oh yeah. So that's that art piece on the mug. But it's a lot of fun to be able to see which letters go with which constellations. Thank you, Mark. Show it again.
Hang on.
Okay.
Just hold still.
You got it? Anyway, but when we were in the Valley of Fire, I was just having so much fun finding these, and they were all over the rocks, just everywhere in there. And you got it? Okay. Anyway, so the bull is the Aleph, okay? And so we know where the bull's located, right there. And the constellations that go with it, this shows the mighty strength and power of Yah, his leadership. He is the Almighty, the strong one, who hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn, the Re'im. And the Re'im appears translated as unicorn, but it's not the mythological animal. It was about the size of an elephant. So that's the size that the fossil record shows us this animal was. And this image shows the Pleiades, known as the Seven Sisters, which kind of form like an arrowhead, sort of. And the Pleiades are found in the neck of the Re'im, and they represent the 7 last plagues of Revelation 16. Now, in Revelation, we are told that the 7 angels represented in the 7 stars hold the 7 last plagues. There's all kinds of star terminology in Scripture, and we just read right over it, spiritualize it away. And it's Mazzaroth stuff. And they hold the 7 last plagues. And so it says in Revelation 15:1, and I saw another sign in heaven, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. What did we read in Romans that is in the heavens? The wrath of God. Remember that? The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches, Revelation 1:20. And so this particular star cluster is repeated all over the earth over and over and over again. In fact, you'll even find representations of Pleiades at Stonehenge. Why would people coming out of the time of the flood care about Pleiades? Why would that be a big deal to them? Because very recently they saw the judgment of Yah. Now, this is something that I found fascinating as well. Creation science says that the heavens used to have a water layer, and that the water layer came down at the time of the flood. The windows of heaven were opened. And in the earth in the time of that water layer would have been like a hyperbaric chamber. It would have been very quick for healing. It's interesting, they've even put snakes in a hyperbaric chamber to see what with that simulation. And do you know what happens? Serpent venom turns into medicine. And so it's very interesting because, like, if you have a viper and it has the ability to read infrared, it would be able to discern your hot spots, which would be your infected area. And if you had the snake bite your hot spot, it would be healing you, not hurting you. The world before the flood and after the fall was a different world than we have today. Found in beads of amber, they found trapped oxygen. And they found that the oxygen content was much higher. And I love when creation scientists talk about that. Kent Hovind, he says, just breathing would have been a lot of fun. Adam and Eve would have looked at each other and go, okay, let's do it. Wow, let's do that again, shall we? And you wouldn't get tired when you ran because the oxygen content was so, it was just completely a different world. So when that water layer came down and the earth was transformed quite dramatically after the flood, we had 2 things going on in the heavens. Now, when the Voyagers 1 and 2 went out to the outer reaches of our solar system, they found the other. And it's interesting because in Jude, it talks about how the patriarchs were talking about judgment. And they said that God would destroy the earth once by water and once by fire. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Well, when they got to the outer reaches of the solar system, do you know what they found out there? I'm not prepared to show you the slides of it, but they found a firewall. Absolutely. There is a firewall on the outer reaches of the solar system. And I believe that in the end, what's going to happen when it says the heavens melted with fervent heat, the Big Bang is coming. Because just as the water layer once came down, that fire layer is kept in store for judgment. And it's in the Maseroth too. And when it comes down, there's going to be one big bang. And it will all be burned up. And then there will be a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth are passed away. Really. Called to Canaan? It's off world, guys. And there's no way out but off. Off and through in Yah. So the Aleph is the star family showing the great strength of Yah, his leadership, his supreme authority. And so he is the ox head, the supreme power. He's represented in this symbol. And interestingly enough, in Hebrew, letters can double as numbers. The Aleph is number 1. And so they do double as numbers. Aleph also is at the head of a number of significant words, like Ab for father. And so it shows the strength and power of the father of the family. In Proverbs 4:1, hear my children, the instruction of a father, an Ab. He is the leader and strength of the family, portraying to the world a picture of the heavenly Father. The Aleph also starts the Hebrew word for El, which represents Yah as his protective role, as the mighty ram that protects the flock. His strength, his authority. Happy is he who has the God, the El of Jacob, for his help. The Aleph is also the first letter of Esh, which is the word for Esh Halak, the fire. Esh, fire. The strong devourer. For Deuteronomy 4:24, for Yahweh thy God is a consuming fire. Anybody connecting these letters with these constellation signs would see these messages. They are there. And guess what? Ahab. We say Ahab. King Ahab had quite a name that he did not live up to, I will say. But the word for love is demonstrating that love is from God. It's from his great strength. So we have the Aleph and then we have the Hey. Hey, look, behold. And then we have the Beit, house, temple of God. Strength of God, behold and look, and then the temple, and all that joined together is for the concept of what it means to love. 1 John 4:8, he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. He's the author of it. And so in this star family, themed on the Aleph, we have all of that Aleph letter meaning in there as well. Okay. I'm taking too long. Sorry, guys. We're going to hurry here. Page 11. All right. The ancients looked to the skies in a way that we will never quite understand today. I'm going to argue with that. I believe Yah's going to bring that back. But this is reading from a quote by Brian Peller. The night sky was seen as a blackboard on which the gods first chose to illustrate and illuminate their wisdom in the creation of all things, past, present, and future, via patterns of light that formed pictures, letters, or words. They all said that it was letters up there. And I'm going to just show you the two, the Aleph and the Tav. The Aleph is found only once in the sky. The repetition of how many times a letter appears is also important to its meaning. It's found only once because there is only one Aleph. It's in the Re'im, Taurus, as it's called today, and it shows Yah is strong and supreme. And the Tav is the covenant mark, the sign, and the Tav is located right here. It's the center point of the southern sky. It's also located up here. This is the northern Tav. So we have Crux, as it's called today, Adam anciently, and we have Cygnus, as it's called today. This is a representation of the bringing in of the Spirit of Yah. And these two portray the Tav in the sky. And there are two instances of the Tav in the sky. Two because we have two witnesses. I will pour out my spirit, the Ruach, that's the name of that bird constellation, upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. And Yah said that he had to die first, and then he could pour out his spirit. So there is a connection between the Tav and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit, Ruach, unto you, Scripture tells us. And so we have the woman, and we have the coming king, and the desire of nations. And down here we have the God manifest in the flesh symbol, and all of that is straddling or connecting with the Tav. And so the Aleph is in the Re'im, and the Tav is found twice in the sky, in the swan and the cross. It is the sign of the covenant being ratified and confirmed, and because of the confirmation, being able to send his spirit. So that concludes our study of the stars for today, and I will be very excited to share with you tomorrow on how the heavens are God's clock. Thanks for listening.